Well, you first heard about it in China. Social credit systems that give you a certain ranking based on doing good things, and you lose ranking if you do bad things. Now, my understanding is that the social credit systems in China were being like trialed. They're not as widespread as a lot of people believed, but rest assured, it wouldn't stay confined to the nation of China, and would eventually make its way over here in some capacity. Now, we already have a kind of loose social credit system in that there's no hard number you receive, sort of, if you do something wrong, but you can be canceled on social media. So we are seeing the rise of this, mob-like hive mind in the United States that isn't quantifying your bad behavior like they are in China. So let me try and rephrase this. You say a naughty word on Twitter, they will cancel you. You question whether or not biological sex is real, they will cancel you. In China, they actually just assign a number to you, and it's kind of like that episode of Black Mirror. Okay, well, here's the actual story. American universities are using social credit systems to track students. I think the title is a little hyperbolic, but upon looking at the evidence, yeah, it is a low-grade form of social credit system. It's an app called Spotter EDU. Let me read you the opening paragraphs, and I'll explain to you what these colleges are doing. They say, a handful of U.S. colleges are employing a type of social credit system through various technologies designed to track students as they attend courses and walk across campus. Universities across the country are using the so-called Spotter EDU app to connect with apps on students' smartphones for the purpose of boosting their, quote, attendance points. The app also sees their absences and logs that information into a campus database that tracks them. Quote, they want those points, Syracuse University professor Jeff Rubin, who teaches Introduction to Information Technologies, told the Washington Post. They know I'm watching and acting on it. So behaviorally, they change. He was referring to the app's ability to socially engineer his students. So here's the app in question. We'll come back to this. They say, an automated attendance monitoring and early alerting platform. Now, many of you may be saying, well, so what? Kids should be attending class if they're paying for it, right? Well, no. College is a bit different. You see, the rules towards colleges are, you might show up, you might not. Can you pass the exam? They don't all function that way. It really depends on if you're going to like a lecture hall or, whatever, man. Now, I didn't go to college because, there's a lot of reasons why. I think I made the right choice. A lot of people are in debt. But because I felt like if you don't need to go to these classes, if you just need to pass a test to get a signed piece of paper, well, that's pointless. What's the piece of paper going to do for you? In my opinion, college degrees, outside of the ones you legally are required to have, like law or medicine or something, or if you want to work at the university, are just a crutch for people who aren't able to confidently sell their abilities or who actually never developed any abilities out in the real world. Anyway, enough ragging on college. The point is, there's a certain flexibility to the rules in our society. Jaywalking is illegal, but for the most part, people jaywalk. The reason the rule's there is because while we want to be like, hey man, this was a circumstance where you shouldn't have jaywalked, typically you can, especially in like New York, though you still might get a ticket if the cop's being like a dick. The point is, don't show up to class, do what you need to do, solve the problems on your own, and pass the test. But now they're creating hard rigidity through artificial intelligence and apps. And apparently what you get, I suppose, is these points. The points are apparently arbitrary, but based on how many points you have will be determined by the professor who thinks you may or may not be attending their class. I'll tell you this. I don't think it's that big of a deal, right? It's like, so what if you have 50 points because you missed a class or two, right? It's the implication. It's the dominoes falling down the path we're heading towards. Eventually, everything's going to be tracked by apps, every business, and we are going to live in a world where we are completely controlled by programs and artificial intelligence. The reason that's particularly scary, for one, look, man, what if the app doesn't work? I guarantee you the app will have errors. Now you're going to be punished because a machine broke. Now, I get it, these things can happen, but we're gonna slowly start building up these walls around us, where eventually, before you even realize it, everything you do will be dictated based on a timer that pops up on your phone saying time to do this, and you won't even know why you're doing it, but you're scared not to. And everyone's going to be locked into these systems. You take a look at what goes on with cancel culture on Twitter. This is a precursor to a social credit system. China's already tried it. It's now going to be, in some capacity rolled out, but we're seeing it. And we need to actively call this out. Otherwise, well, I'll tell you this. We need to call it out, but I don't think anything's going to stop it. I think the call for convenience is too easy. These professors are like, what's the big deal? It's just an attendance app, right? And then the next person says, what's the big deal? It's just a grade tracking app, right? What's the big deal? It's just a social media account. Now, we already have the issue where on social media, your follower count is like a point system where people are assigning value to people based on how many followers they have. If you want to, say you're a musician, you want to play a show, and it's been this way for a long time. It used to be that you sent in a demo to the venue and they would listen to it and be like, okay. And they'd ask you, be like, do you have a press kit? Like, how big are your shows? And they'd take your word for it. And sometimes people wouldn't show up, and that's the way it is. Then we started seeing the rise of social media. And then, if you wanted to get a show, you had to show them how many followers you had. So people started buying fake followers. We started building up this fake world, and now you got all these Instagram influencers who buy fake followers and pretend like they're famous and then actually sell ads against it. Yeah, we are seeing how technology is creating this quantified reality where people are just going to do and believe whatever the machine tells them. So let me make sure I can make that point clear. A booker at a venue would listen to the music. They'd look at your past, they look at photos of past shows and decide whether or not they thought it was a good idea to have you play their venue. Now it's like, how many followers do you have? 100,000? Works for me. I don't care what music you play if people show up and give me money, buy booze or whatever. And that's where we're headed. So don't be surprised if in the future music is complete garbage because people just buy fake followers to pretend like they're real and then no one shows up and the venues do worse. Let's read a little bit more about this story about this here university app. They say, not every student is on board with the app and its implications. Quote, we're adults. Do we really need to be tracked? Robbie Pfeiffer, a sophomore at Virginia Commonwealth University in Richmond, told WAPO. Why is this necessary? How does this benefit us? And is it just going to keep progressing until we're micromanaged every second of the day? Yes. Pfeiffer's campus recently began logging the attendance of students connected to the campus's Wi-Fi network, which empowers colleges to track hundreds of thousands of students more precisely than at any other time in American history. Spotter EDU worked with about 40 schools, including Central Florida, Missouri, Indiana. According to the company chief, Rick Carter, a former college basketball coach, he developed the app in 2015 to watch over his athletes as they navigated their respective campuses. So basically, here's what's happening. As the one professor already stated, these students know they're being watched. It's beyond just their attendance, right? The way the Washington Post kind of put it, colleges are turning students' phones into surveillance machines, tracking the locations of hundreds of thousands. Now, it may just be when you walk into the class. The story is, the way they say it is there's Bluetooth sensors and campus-wide Wi-Fi. So they know where you are all the time. You walk into class, the Bluetooth thing goes off, sees your phone, knows you're in the classroom, tells the professor. Man, think about the world that's being built. It's literally the panopticon. It's Big Brother, okay? One of the scariest aspects of the Big Brother dystopian future was that you could never be yourself because they were always watching. You could never, sit back, let your gut come out, stick your hands in your pants and crack a beer and watch TV and just have your own privacy. Because, well, we're not there yet. So they know you're in your bedroom watching TV shows. But we will get to a point now where they're already putting cameras everywhere, and it's beyond just whether or not they can see you. They're going to know what you're doing. You know that Facebook knows when you're going to go to the bathroom? Facebook knows where you're going to eat. This is the world that's being built. And once people realize they're being watched, it's going to put people in this really rigid, tight space. Could you imagine? You look at the things that like Michael Bloomberg says. He says we should tax sugary drinks because people are too stupid and they'll buy them and it's bad for them. He said at a forum something about taxing the poor is a good thing. Otherwise they'll have money to spend on things that hurt them. That's the mentality of the people in power and have all this money. And what's going to be built is we'll eventually come to a point where Facebook's going to start shaming you, sort of. You know what I mean? When people, surprisingly, people don't care that Zuckerberg knows when you're going to the bathroom. I think at a certain point you probably should be worried about that, but fine, whatever. But they're going to start being able to predict politics. They're going to start being able to control industry. We are entering a space of complete authoritarianism through capitulation. The people who use these apps think it's not a big deal, it's convenient. But then they're eventually worried, as the story highlights, that the schools and the teachers know what they're doing, so they change their behavior accordingly. Let me make sure I can make this point, drive it home. In the beginning of the story, they say that these students want these points. They know I'm watching and acting on it. So behaviorally, they change. Where do you think that's going to bring us in the future? It's starting with the universities. It's eventually going to be rolled out by jobs. In Europe, they passed a law that said they can't email you after work. I don't like the idea, but I think it's maybe a good thing, when you look at this. We're going to come to a point now where you're going to have an app for your job that's going to track your location. And they're going to say, hey, it's part of the contract you signed. We want to know where you're at all times. They already do it to truck drivers. They're doing it at schools. What's to stop them from doing it at your job? Knowing where you are and what you're doing. And then they might see that you went and did something, and they're going to say, that's counterproductive. Or to make things, better, let's say you work for a fast food restaurant and you are on call. You know what on call means? Basically means you're off, but if they need you, they'll call you in. You got to come in. Well, all of my friends usually ignore their phones. They're like, I'm off today, but I'm on call. Or this is how it used to be back when, I hung out with people when we were younger and we worked at fast food kind of places. And the phone would ring and they would ignore it. If it's my job. If I answer it, they're gonna make me come in. I'm just gonna tell them I was doing this. I'll tell them I was out with my family. Or they'll literally call and say I'm out with my family. Something like that. What happens when the job has an app so that you can check your schedule? And that app also tracks your location. Because if you want the job, we wanna know where you're at. So they could say something like this. Say you apply at McDonald's, they'll say, okay, I won't use McDonald's as an example, but say you apply at a fast food restaurant. They say as part of this job, you must have this app installed to track your pay, your hours, and your schedule. Makes sense, right? Easy. They also say the app has location services, so when we do on call, we know if you're available. And most people will just be like, oh, okay. And this will get rid of that freedom to where you could be like, I can't work today, I'm just too tired, and they're gonna try and call me and they're gonna get mad at me, so I just ignore it. Nope, that'll be gone. And it's going to be a bunch of little things. Let me do this. I'm going to spend the next the last segment, a bit of this segment, to tell you about a vision I have of the future as this social credit system and artificial intelligence dictating our lives as it expands. Imagine this: you're sitting at a cafe with a friend, and your phone vibrates, and you look, and it says, user Timcast task required, and it says. It shows a picture of a weird object laying in the street. It says, take this object, hand it to this person. And it shows a picture of a random person. And so I'm like, oh, I gotta go to work. I get up, I walk 10 feet, I pick up this weird, strange, twisted, object gear looking box or something. And then it says, walk to this location. So I walk 100 feet and there's that person. I hand it to them and they say, thank you. And they walk away. This is my vision of the future. So bear with me, I'll explain this. Is it the most efficient thing in the world for the contractor to go and actually hire someone to go and get the wood himself? Technically, no. If an artificial intelligence started taking over how the industry worked and completely ran it, there would be jobs you just don't understand and never would because it doesn't seem to make sense. They don't need you to build the weird gearbox, go source the supplies, go find the supplies, build it, and then try and figure out who needs it. The artificial intelligence already knows who needs it. It already knows who has the materials. It already knows who's close enough to pick it up and bring it to somebody else. So you wouldn't have a schedule. You wouldn't have a boss. You'd have an AI telling you where to go and what to do. Now, admittedly, this would dramatically reduce the workload for everybody. But it's also a really weird, passionless future. And so I've talked to my friends about this, and they've said things like, no, but people want to do things. No, man. People want to do specific things based on, how our society functions today. They see an astronaut, they want to be an astronaut, right? What about an app where you earn points for doing tasks you don't quite understand? Yeah, you would do it. And then you'd brag about how you're gold medal on the app and you're like rank 73 because you've carried out the most arbitrary tasks you don't quite understand. But in the end, when you zoom out of this individual, so let's go through this again. You're sitting at a cafe, your phone vibrates, it says, take this item to this man. It tells you where to go, you follow the arrow, you don't even know what street you're on, you do it. You now have a rank of you're doing really, really well, but you have no idea what the task was for, you have no idea why it mattered, and you'll never ask the question. But now stop, imagine an overhead view and zoom out all the way in outer space and look down at all of the people doing these little tasks all over the place, and it will be a substantially more efficient way to build something. And this person didn't realize it, but they built a spaceship or something. The big problem is that AI is created by people. I think so this future of a completely decentralized, kind of like arbitrary work that results in a bigger picture is idealized, right? This idea that we're going to have a future where we build spaceships and go to Mars and an AI is dictating it benevolently. Here's one of the biggest mistakes people make when it comes to artificial intelligence. The assumption that there's going to be some like humanistic nefarious plot, right? And trust me, this does tie into what's going on at these universities. I'll bring it up. I'm roping it all together. Stay tuned. Here, people imagine that the artificial intelligence will behave the way humans think it will behave, right? So they think either you're going to see the Terminator scenario or the Ultron scenario where the AI realizes to make a peaceful world, we just wipe out humans. Never going to happen. That makes no sense. that won't be within the parameters of what the AI is. That's possible, but very, very unlikely. Other people think if we tell the AI we want to go to the moon, then we'll have this future where the AI can accurately predict and build things, and it becomes faster than itself. So it keeps improving itself, and we just get to live in like a Wall-E style paradise where we're all fat, floating around in chairs and going off into outer space. Not going to happen either. Possible, not going to happen. I'll tell you what's really going to happen. The best example is to go look at the ElsaGate conspiracy on YouTube. For those that aren't familiar, this was a period where a couple different things were happening on YouTube. For one, you had all of these videos of women who dress up like Elsa from Frozen, Spider-Man, and the Joker, and they would do this, dialogue-less, weird, like slapstick comedy. And these videos were everywhere, and they were getting ridiculous amounts of views. But the other more important thing that happened was the weird finger family crisis. This was when a whole bunch of really creepy, algorithmically generated videos started popping up of like the Incredible Hulk dancing with Hitler while some really crappy nursery rhyme plays. There were videos popping up of like little kids drinking urine, just like really messed up stuff. And it was because it was algorithmically generated. This is what we are facing today, and it's what's going to happen in the future with this. You think the app right now tracks your attendance. And so the assumption from the people is, with this app, students will be more likely to go to school. No. The humans will find a more efficient path, a desire path. A desire path is a path that deviates from the constructed path and goes a different direction to find its end result. So what you'll likely see, the attendance app is probably light. It's probably not the biggest deal in the world, but it is something we're heading towards. You will likely end up seeing people find a different way to earn points. Location spoofers. Now they'll just stop going to class altogether because they can just spoof their location. That'll work, right? Well, not with the Bluetooth sensors. Maybe they'll just hand their phone to someone and say, go to class for me. There's ways around this. It's not going to play out the way they think it is. And that brings me to the main point about what our future will look like if we keep building apps like this that try to guide people through weird artificial intelligence systems. You see, all of that stuff with ElsaGate, it was designed by humans on purpose, but they didn't realize what was going to happen. You see, YouTube wanted Game of Thrones. Instead, what did they get? They got weird, creepy videos of kids drinking urine and injecting themselves in the butts, and like Spider-Man chasing Elsa and the Joker falling downstairs, and someone singing Finger Family while Hitler danced to it. It was insane. It is psychotic. And that was the result. You see, the parameters programmed by YouTube, these humans looked at Game of Thrones. I'm using Game of Thrones as a hypothetical. They looked at these TV shows and said, we want at least 10 minutes, we want long engagement, we want hot, popular keywords, and we don't know what those keywords are because they change. What did you get? You got freaky nursery rhymes where the Incredible Hulk was dancing with, skeletons and Spider-Man, and, kids were injecting themselves in the butt. Like, I kid you not, there were videos where a guy literally injects a kid with a syringe. Like, it's because the algorithm doesn't understand. The humans do, but the humans couldn't program it properly. So if you think we'll get a Terminator scenario, you're wrong. If you think we're going to get this beautiful decentralized AI that's going to build the path of the future, you're wrong. We're going to get a freakish nightmare, and we're already living in it. The way I described it, I was on Steven Crowder recently, and the way I described it was, YouTube programmed an algorithm because they wanted Game of Thrones. Instead, they got some dude in his bedroom complaining about the Democrats all day. And I'm making fun of myself and other people, but you get the point. The video you're watching right now fits the specific parameters of what YouTube wanted in content, but it's not the content YouTube wanted, so they're angry about it. So they're punishing us and trying to stop it somehow, but the machine has grown too large. This will happen on a grander scale, and it will get worse. YouTube wanted, more than 10 minutes. They want high retention rates. They want popular words. You're looking right at it. We've got social credit system. We've got university. We've got now going on 20 minutes where I've been talking straight, and many of you have listened to the whole thing. This fits all of those parameters, but this is not what they had in mind. What they had in mind was an action-adventure movie. You don't even need to watch the video. Right now, I'm just talking. You could go to a different tab. You could be playing video games and listening to what I'm saying. It's like a podcast. Not what YouTube wanted. So they're actively trying to suppress it now because it was created on accident. Think about that, but at a massive scale, as these schools and other outlets start using similar algorithmic programs to incentivize and disincentivize certain behaviors. And you will end up, you will not be able to predict what the world will look like. We're going to end up with universities where no one goes to class anymore and no one knows why. And they just take, that's kind of a good thing. I think college is terrible, but... So anyway, this is the main point, right? it's not so much about social credit systems. It is. The issue is that the social credit system will not produce what you think it will produce. You can design an algorithm to incentivize and disincentivize certain things, and what you will end up with is not Game of Thrones. You will end up with Elsa chasing Spider-Man and falling down the stairs and kids drinking urine. I'm not exaggerating. That existed. Google it. I made several videos about it when the scandal broke out. That's what's going to happen through all of these social tracking systems. Facebook has been doing this worse than YouTube. It's been a nightmare. And I've explained this before, but I'll wrap it up with this one final point. You need to check this out. At the early dawn of Facebook, they started prioritizing buzzwords, keywords, because they wanted engaging content to surface. This gave rise to intersectionality. It makes sense, right? If you write an article about racism, you will get a certain amount of people to watch because they care about racism. If you write about sexism, then you'll get the people who care about sexism. But what about both? How do we write an article? We write about racist sexism, hence intersectionality. Now you see articles from Vice that say like trans women of color, facing police brutality explains why Black Lives Matter is so important. They cram as much as possible into a single article to get the biggest audience and the biggest algorithmic push on Facebook. This has resulted in a massive explosion of certain terminology. As I've shown this before, there's a data set from LexisNexis showing how this happened. Nobody wanted it to happen. Facebook did not think they would give rise to a radical left that would destabilize the Democratic Party, but they did. You can predict where it goes from here, sort of. We don't know exactly what will end up happening. But as long as they keep implementing programs like this, not realizing that it's going to have, let me wrap this up. He says they know I'm watching, acting on it, so behaviorally they change. You don't know how they change. You don't know what the response will be. You think you know. You think the simple solution is they'll just come to class. No. Someone will probably create a Bluetooth transponder that simulates someone's location, and someone will probably hack a spoofing app, and it will actually cause chaos, and attendance might actually go down, because now people realize you're not even looking for them anymore. The teacher might even be like, I'm not going to bother taking attendance or looking for students because the app does it for me, and now they're spoofing it, and the end result could be the complete opposite of what you wanted. I think we're doomed anyways or whatever. I guess we'll figure it out. But my vision of the future is going to be people are going to be acting really weird, saying things that make no sense. They're going to be screaming at each other all the time because these are the things the machine incentivizes. I'll tell you what. Go watch some Doctor Who about, the AI that was supposed to protect that colony or whatever. I can't remember what episode it was. Whatever, I'm done. Long video, sorry. I'll see you all in the next segment at 1 p.m. Thanks for hanging out.